Hello and welcome to DSW's Endpoint Assessment for the Level 3 Senior Financial Services Customer Advisor Standard. My name's Isobel, I'm a product owner at DSW and I'll be talking you through this standard today. This recording is designed to give you an overview of what will happen during endpoint assessment, what to expect, when it will take place, but also how apprentices can prepare and what support is available. By the end of this, you should have a clear understanding of how the process will work and what the requirements are. And of course, if there are any questions or anything you need more information on, we'll show you where to go for additional support at the end of the recording. Today we'll be discussing what the endpoint assessment process looks like, how and when it will be delivered, what happens during the assessment itself, and we'll go into more detail about the Senior Financial Services Customer Advisor Standard, how each assessment method works, and how it will be graded. What is endpoint assessment? This is what we call the series of assessments an apprentice must take to prove they're able to do the job for which they've been training. These take place once the on-programme period is complete and the apprentice is deemed ready for endpoint assessment. Assessment design and delivery. DSW create assessment materials in line with robust design principles that are recognised by Ofqual. These principles are validity, reliability and comparability, manageability and minimising bias. This means you can be assured that our assessments are appropriate for the standard, that everyone will get the same experience, that the assessments will be consistent and fair, and that everyone will have a chance to succeed. When does endpoint assessment happen? Endpoint assessment begins when the on-programme phase has been completed, required functional skills and professional qualification have been achieved, and the employer and apprenticeship training provider agree that the apprentice is competent. This next stage is called Gateway, and it's when the apprentice begins preparing for the endpoint assessment process. What happens during endpoint assessment? The apprentice completes the assessments detailed in the assessment plan. There is still an expectation that the apprenticeship training provider will support the apprentice through the endpoint assessment period. This is to ensure they're familiar with what's to come, and so mock exams can be completed with them. In order to pass and be deemed competent, the apprentice must pass all of the assessments. This typically happens over a period of 4 months from the point they're approved for Gateway. The Senior Financial Services Customer Advisor Endpoint Assessment is made up of 2 components, a portfolio and a professional discussion. At the planning meeting, it will be agreed when and how the portfolio will be made available to the endpoint assessor and when the professional discussion will take place. The professional discussion should take place a minimum of 15 working days after the portfolio has been assessed. The professional discussion cannot take place until the portfolio has met the minimum number of outcomes to progress. The apprentice must ensure all evidence submitted for assessment is free from GDPR breaches and submit a GDPR consent list. The DSW GDPR policy and consent list can be found on EPA Pro. We will require proof that the professional qualification was achieved at a distinction should the apprentice want to use that towards their overall grade. This will need to be submitted as part of the portfolio as well as at Gateway. The standard is made up of 42 core knowledge, skills and behaviour pass criteria, 49 if the optional team leadership route is taken. In addition to the pass criteria, the standard consists of 20 distinction criteria. The criteria and amplification can be found in the toolkit. We'll look at each method in a bit more detail now. Portfolio of evidence. The portfolio of evidence enables the apprentice to present examples of their application of the knowledge, skills and behaviours of the standard. The portfolio is compiled within the last 3 months of the on-programme phase, in addition to evidence collected within the endpoint assessment period. With guidance from the employer or training provider, the apprentice will select appropriate evidence to meet the criteria detailed in the referencing table. In addition to the core outcomes, the apprentice can opt to complete the team leadership route. This must be confirmed when registering the apprentice. Apprentices who successfully complete the team leadership route will achieve the Senior Financial Services Customer Advisor with Team Leader option, which will appear on their certificate. In the event that an apprentice has opted to complete the team leadership route, however fails to meet the additional outcomes but passes the core of the standard, they can still achieve the Senior Financial Service Customer Advisor standard. Alternatively, the apprentice can choose to resit to achieve the team leadership route under DSW's resit policy. The portfolio should demonstrate attainment of the skills and behaviours identified in the standard, show application of learning and skills, and contain substantial real work tasks completed. The toolkit provides guidance on what type of evidence can be included in the portfolio and a steer on how to ensure the evidence is sufficient, authentic, relevant and current. Prior to the portfolio being submitted to DSW, it will need to be reviewed by the employer and training provider. The declaration in the toolkit must be completed by both parties, outlining the grade they believe the apprentice is on track to achieve, along with the rationale. This will need to be submitted as part of the portfolio. The portfolio can either be uploaded to EPA Pro as a zip folder, or you can provide us with a link to your ePortfolio platform. The portfolio will be submitted to DSW on the date agreed at the planning meeting, and the endpoint assessor will assess the portfolio prior to the professional discussion taking place. In order for the apprentice to progress to the professional discussion, a minimum of 34 criteria must be met at a pass or above in the portfolio, or 41 if the team leadership route is taken. Any criteria not met in the portfolio must be met in the professional discussion. Once the endpoint assessor has assessed the portfolio, they will advise the apprentice if they've covered enough of the learning outcomes to progress to the professional discussion. A feedback summary will be provided on the portfolio at competency area level. DSW are not permitted to provide details of specific criteria to be covered in the discussion. Context statement. When we refer to a context statement, we want to know what the apprentice has done in a specific situation, who, what, where, why, and when. Build a picture behind a specific situation, and from there they can pull on pieces of product and performance evidence which demonstrate exactly what they've done in relation to the context statement. It's a great way for apprentices to bring all of their evidence together and give a more rounded picture of what they're capable of. They do need to make sure they corroborate what they've said in their context statement with evidence, as context statements are classed as anecdotal evidence. Evidence types. We don't specify a minimum or maximum in terms of pieces of evidence to be included in the portfolio. One piece of evidence could span several past descriptors, so they could use one context statement and additional pieces of evidence to cover multiple descriptors. Conversely, there may be descriptors which require several pieces of evidence in order to meet them in full. A piece of evidence might be a single document, or it may be a folder containing a number of documents which link together. A portfolio should be a combination of anecdotal, performance and product evidence. More information on evidence types can be found in the toolkit. We'll go now on to types of evidence. Types of evidence. As you can see, there's a wide range of evidence types, and this list is not exhaustive. You may find that the evidence you choose to provide is different to what appears here, which is absolutely fine as long as it's demonstrating the pass and distinction descriptors. Heavily redacted documents are preferred to excerpts, but both would be accepted, and we do ask that videos and recordings are a maximum of 2 hours within the portfolio, and they will need to be time-stamped in the referencing table. Evidence stipulations. All evidence must be clearly labelled, dated and referenced in the portfolio referencing table. All documents should be amended or redacted to ensure confidentiality and data protection are adhered to and that no GDPR breaches occur. Please see DSW's GDPR policy for guidance on how to redact sensitive data, as breaches may occur of fail or remedial action. Any feedback from on-programme assessors should be removed. Evidence must be sufficient, authentic, relevant and current. Sufficient means that enough evidence must be produced to clearly meet all of the relevant criteria in full. Sufficient does not mean a mass of evidence. It simply means collecting enough quality evidence to demonstrate competence. Authentic means the apprentice must be able to explain and substantiate the evidence put forward. It's important to ensure that only evidence that relates to the apprentice's own performance is submitted. There is a declaration to be completed at Gateway to confirm that evidence will be authentic. Any evidence must relate clearly to the criteria, the job role and the apprentice's performance. Avoid the inclusion of reference documents, training materials and other evidence that simply bulks out the portfolio. Current means evidence relating to knowledge, skills and behaviours that the apprentice currently demonstrates. These will tend to be the best pieces of work. Evidence should be gathered and collated towards the end of the apprenticeship programme. Professional discussion. The professional discussion will be in the form of a structured discussion between the apprentice and endpoint assessor. The aim of the discussion is to explore what's been produced in the portfolio, how it's been produced and how well they're performing in their role. There will be 15 discussion points, and the professional discussion will explore evidence for 14 criteria. Up to 8 of these criteria can be areas where sufficient evidence was not provided in the portfolio. The remainder of the 14 can focus on the potential to demonstrate distinction. It will assess the softer skills of the standard, and questions will be asked about the evidence submitted in the portfolio. There will be 1 discussion point on how the apprentice has progressed in their role, what they've done, and their approach to work. Sample questions for the professional discussion can be found in the toolkit. The endpoint assessor can use up to 2 follow-up questions per core question or discussion point, and the apprentice is able to bring notes into the professional discussion. The professional discussion will be carried out remotely using video conferencing facilities and will typically last 60 minutes with an additional 10% at the discretion of the assessor. Anything in excess of this will not be assessed. The training provider will ensure that the apprentice is given support so they're comfortable with the technology to be used ahead of the discussion. The use of mock discussions prior to the live assessment is strongly recommended. The portfolio and discussion will be graded synoptically by the endpoint assessor based on the standard and grading criteria. Final judgment and the overall grade for the apprenticeship will be made by the endpoint assessor following completion of the professional discussion. The result and a feedback summary on each assessment method will be made available to the training provider within 5 working days of the discussion taking place. Scoring and grading. There are 3 levels of achievement within this apprenticeship: fail, pass and distinction. There are 42 criteria within the standard and 49 if the optional team leadership route is taken. A minimum of 34 pass criteria must be met in the portfolio, or 41 if the team leadership route is taken. Any pass criteria not met in the portfolio must be met in the professional discussion. Each criteria has its own descriptor which explains what's required to achieve a pass or a distinction. To achieve an overall pass, the apprentice must demonstrate competence against 42 pass criteria, or 49 for the team leadership route. To achieve a distinction, in addition to meeting the pass criteria, the apprentice must achieve a distinction in all of the distinction criteria within customer relationship management, delivering results, teamwork and personal development learning areas, and achieve all distinction criteria in 3 further skills and behaviour learning areas. The professional qualification will count as one of these if it was passed at distinction level. The 2 assessment methods are cumulative, and the overall outcomes across both portfolio and professional discussion will determine the overall grade achieved. The portfolio and professional discussion will be graded as either progression or non-progression. An overall grade, which will be confirmed via the assessment record, will state if the apprentice has achieved fail, pass or distinction. Apprentices who fail one or more assessment method will be offered the opportunity to take a resit or retake. A resit does not require further learning, whereas a retake does. Apprentices should have a supportive action plan in place to prepare for a resit or retake, and the apprentice's employer will need to agree that a resit or retake is an appropriate course of action. Resits and retakes are not offered to apprentices wishing to move from pass to distinction. The timescales for a resit or retake are agreed between the employer and DSW. Thank you for watching. We hope this has been helpful. As always, we're happy to help if you have any questions or need any more information, so please do get in touch. You can email us at info@dswapprenticeships.co.uk or give us a call on 01302 760 008. Thank you.